Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. We're going to take a look at another Conquest Last Argument battle report. This one will be between the 100 Kingdoms and Spires. Regular Spires opponent for this one. We managed to get down the road to a different local gaming store, or club I should say, it wasn't actually a store, but trying to spread the good word about Conquest and get other people interested in our game, so good to venture around town a little bit to do that. So a little bit better lighting conditions for the photos, that was really nice. I will be playing the same list that I played in my previous battle reports. For those of you guys who are regulars on the channel, you might recognize this one as the previous list that I played. Same Errant of the Order of the Shield, and I decided to bust him out again just because last game he was proxied with a miniature that was 3D printed, and this time I actually have the new miniature ready to go, and he's half painted for the game. I'll get there to the full painting soon. So he's back at it with his Elysian Fragment and Eccentric fighting style, just so good in the Militia because the Servite is a very, very useful upgrade to have for the Militia, and the fact that he gives them Fearless is huge. So when you're Resolve 4 and the Militia get the Servite bonus and you are Fearless, then they just take much lower damage than your opponent would normally expect. Even at defense 2, you know, you've got a lot of stands there, so you're not going to lose them all. Ashen Dawn, just a great staple if you can take them, and know that they are the only heavy unit in the list, so you auto-pick them on turn 3 and everything else in your army is showing up. So Imperial Officer, going to remember to use the Supremacy ability this time, but also the Free Vanguard is very, very helpful. No upgrades there, and with the Mage, we've got the Talented again. I think I might eventually drop the Talented. School of Water is really the main way to go there. Noble Lord, again, Fearless from front of the line. I've been finding it so helpful. So Household Guard, not the best resolve in the world, but when you've got the resolve bonus from the unit and you're not taking Fearless, then your unit can survive for so much longer, and of course you can heal them more effectively. Really good idea. Of course, when you're playing Theists, then you're going to have a bit more Indomitable, and I will be playing Theists again soon, but for now we're sticking with Feudal and Imperial. Alright, my opponent will be playing, he'll be playing Directorate Biomancer, as he often does, and I think Directorate Biomancer here is the meta really for Spires is the way to go. He has taken a lot of unit upgrades. So Degenerative Aura, Master of Flesh, and then the flank Pheromones there, and the Pheromancer's got Plaguelord in addition to Avatar Projection. So quite a lot of character upgrades, and that leaves room for the following units. He's got the big unit of Bound Clones with the Biomancer, Min Unit Desolation, A-Bomb Behemoth, and then the typical warband for the Prideborne there, Avatars, Stryx and Brute Drones, with 5 Brute Drones, I might add. So there's that. I just want to point out that my approach to Spires, if I was a Spires player, would look a little bit more like this, where you actually have ton of stuff. So this is a 14 card list, and the characters are generally unupgraded. The thing is, the Biomancer is going to be sitting in the back, either in the Force Groans or the Desolations, and he's not going to get a lot of value out of Biotic Renewal, but you don't need to take Master of Flesh on him, and he's really just going to be there to pump out the scoring on the Force Groans or the Stryx and not contributing too heavily to battle, because you've got all these other units to do work with, and I think when you're distracting them with all of the other like shaft that you're throwing at them, it gives you more time to bust out the Marksman clones and the Leonines, and of course the Biomancer can put the Grand Virulence on them. So that's how I would play Spires, but my opponent has got this one here. Alright, so we happen to be playing Foresight, which is my least favorite mission in the pack. My opponent really hasn't played it very much, so that's the only reason why we're giving it a go. The reason why I dislike this mission, and the reason why when we had a Tabletop Simulator tournament internationally and like a whole bunch of people played, and everybody voted to take that out of the lineup. So it's just not just me, it's everybody's opinion that Foresight is not a particularly good mission. The reason why is that it introduces too much randomness into scoring. So on the one hand, you might argue that you can out-mind game your opponent and just level them out by thinking, okay, my opponent's the kind of person who would take this risk or make this decision, so I'm going to outthink them. But at the end of the day, it's not very reliable to do that, and what you're doing here is you're picking one of the zones that will count as not counting as scoring. Your opponent does the same, but you don't pick the middle one, and then if you guys pick the same one, it counts as double the points. So look at this tabletop here. I'm deploying on the bottom, and you can see the 2 zones here which are closest to me. Then there's the middle zone there, and then you've got the 2 forests in the background. Behind the forest, there are 2 more zones which are closer to my Spires opponent. So at the end of the first round, or at the start of the first supremacy phase, if I pick this circle here as my pick, and my opponent also picks that circle, then I'll score double points from that one. So if you come back to the scenario, you're getting 2 for each objective zones, 2 if you're getting more of them, not including the central one. So I've got 6 so far, 2 for each plus the bonus, that is 6 points. So if I get double from that one, I'm actually getting 8 points, if I'm adding that up correctly, whereas my opponent will get 4 from his 2 zones on his side, right? But for example, if I pick the one on my right and my opponent picks the one on my left, then I get neither of them, and my opponent still gets 6 points because he's still getting 2 for each zone plus 2 for the bonus. So you can sort of see how easily it can swing the game. If you play a really close game of Conquest Last Argument, and the points are really even, and the combat's really even, and you're both playing your hearts out, and you're doing very well, but the picks are going against you every single time, you'll just lose, and it won't even be a real game. So the scenario itself can steal the fun out of a competition, unfortunately. We are playing it though, it's just a casual game, not a tournament game, so I'm showing up with my Militia with the Order of the Shield guy, auto-picking the Mage to come on, and I forgot that the Imperial Officer has flank, and he gives that to the other unit, the crossbowmen, so they're coming on turn 2, just a mistake from me, very forgetful. So here we go, the Order of the Shield moving up to the zone on my right. He is obviously benefiting from the Relentless Drills here, which gives the unit plus for scoring from the Resolve bonus, but it is turn 1, you can't score until turn 2, and the Mage is going next to him so she can pump out the fireballs in the middle, or heal the Militia if need be. Now, I have bought the support pack for 100 Kingdoms, which has got all these fancy cards, so I've just mixed in the card art that I like in with the normal deck, so we'll see a bit more of that. But for turn 2, we're just going to burn through all of the character cards, then all of the rest of the units, and then the Militia will go last, just in case he happens to run something in front of them somehow, such as Stryx. But the Stryx are going to go on the other side there. They are on my left, and the opponent, obviously using Directorate, can turn a light regiment into scoring, so that is going to be his strategy there. That's why they're just towing the zone, nice and easy. The Leonines are going to be coming in opposite the Militia. The good thing for me is that I've got a lot of healing here. Other good thing is that I'm going to be bringing on the Noble Lord in the middle to provide the bubble of reroll 6s, which is a great counter to Deadly Shot, because you would normally take 2 wounds for every roll of a 6 from a failed defense roll, but because you can reroll 6s, you really counter that and negate that. So I'm going to be feeling confident against these guys, and of course I've got shooting to counter him, and I can even fireball them if I need to. On the left, against those Stryx, we've got the Men-at-Arms. They really want to take on the Stryx because they can destroy the Stryx without costing as much as the Stryx, and they can score, and they can also screen for something else. But I love that new card there, that little classic concept card art for the Men-at-Arms in the picture. So, opponent bring on the Warlord with the 6-bound clones and the Bastion, and obviously the -1 defense and +1 defense spell on them, etc., etc. So they're going to go for the center of the table. This big aquarium tree you see there, I love the color, I love the style of that, but we're counting as an impassable piece. On my extreme right-hand flank, I'm putting in the other unit of Men-at-Arms, and these guys are just going to sneak up through the forest, and there's nothing in my opponent army that's cheap enough to basically trade with them, and there's nothing in my opponent's army that's really, expensive enough to beat them. So regardless of what he puts on this flank, I'm going to be happy to just sort of dance around the forest with the Men-at-Arms for a while. I love that about them. So Mercenary Crossmen can't do much at this point. And then over here we've got the Hunter Cadre, who are able to march up using the Vanguard from the Imperial Officer's Supremacy ability, and they're able to just hit the zone with the corner of the base in turn 2 to do scoring. This is what's so good about the Hunter Cadre. And then, of course, last activation, turn 2, we've got the Noble Lord moving through, just aiming for the central zone. Going to be taking on the Biomancer's bound clones, just because when I get into combat, I can declare a duel with the Noble Lord, and I've got the reroll 6s, and I've got healing nearby from the mage. Only problem I need to watch out for is that he has taken the Degenerative aura from the Biomancer, which stops me from healing the Assault Guard, and of course he's got Lethal Demise, so they may need the support of the crossbows or some fireballs to deal with the Biomancer's unit, and even then he's got the healing, so it's going to be a tough matchup. Imperial Officer moving in behind the Mage. The thinking here is that the Officer can grant Harden to the Militia, who are going to get shot at inevitably by the Leonines, and he can give Murderous Volley to the Mage, and even though the crossbows are stuck here with blocked line of sight, because I can move the front crossbows and the Militia off that little hill, I can use the height advantage of the hill to shoot over them, and my opponent's playing Cavalry anyway, which is size 2, so I can shoot over my own regiments onto them, or to the Brute Drones, or to his monsters if he shows up, or even the other unit of cavalry, which is the Centaurs. So we're on to turn 3 now, and I'm bringing in the vast majority of my army, including the Ashen Dawn. They're going to be activating somewhere towards the middle, but really just burning through all of the characters to begin with, then moving on to the regiments. This is the strategy, as you can see. So right-hand flank, those militia, those men-at-arms, are just going to creep up to this objective here, unless he counter-deploys with something. And whatever he deploys there really is just not going to be able to stop the men-at-arms if it's just like a cheap 120-point unit. And if it's a 200-point unit, then he can just stay there. I can stay there with the men-at-arms, and I think I've made my point. In the middle, that's where I'm strongest, and on the left, he hasn't really deployed much yet, but we're waiting on the big unit of Brute Drones, which will be quite an important commitment. All right, speaking of important commitments, he's got the Siegebreaker. It is going up against the Militia. Now, the Siegebreaker will do very well against Militia, but I will add that my Militia are fearless, and they're going to be effectively resolve 5. And, he does have Smite, but I have got quite a few stands there. And then, of course, Elysian Fragment. If I get the jump on the Siegebreaker, they will tear it apart. So it's going to be a bit cagey for a while there, and I really feel like my opponent probably should have used this regiment to go after the Household Guard, which is a little bit of a better matchup for the Siegebreaker because it gets straight through the defense. I don't get to get reroll 6s effectively, and the Household Guard will take quite a while to chew through it. So that would have been my preference. Okay, Desolation Drones coming in just behind the little birdies. They are going to be able to shuffle onto the objective after the Stryx move off of it, and they are medium, so they can score quite happily there. So that's a pretty good spot for them to be honest. I think that I would have been eyeing up the center there, where if they can come in and hit the Household Guard at the same time that they're fighting the Bound Clones, that's quite good, because then the Household Guard will have a tougher time against the Bound Clones attacks, but also the Lethal Demise from the Bound Clones will be more effective due to the subtracted defense. These guys also make a great combo with the Pheromancer for his -1 defense as well. So Household Guard moving straight up here. We're not moving on to the objective yet. We're just using the cover of the forest just in case he shoots at me with the Leonines, and just waiting to get into position there against the Bound Clones without getting flanked or anything. So the Brute Drones are committed now. They're going on to the right-hand flank for Spires. This will be up against the Hunter Cadre and the Men-at-Arms, and this large regiment is easily enough to deal with both of those 100 Kingdoms troopers, but now that he's put them there, I feel like I can quite safely counter-deploy my Ashen Dawn onto this flank, because the Ashen Dawn are only really worried about the Siegebreaker, and he's committed the Siegebreaker to the center, so the Ashen Dawn can come on a little bit later. I really recommend taking army lists with a lot of cards, guys, and this sort of demonstrates one of the reasons why that's a big deal, because when you come to turn 3 and you're committing a really big important regiment, you want to do that after seeing where your opponent has placed their big scary regiment, especially if their one will counter your one, and if you can effectively deploy it somewhere else and get maximum value for it, that's a huge deal. It makes a huge difference. Okay, right-hand side, just creeping a bit further forward with a sneaky stealth unit of men-at-arms, and they are within one turn of actually just sneaking and stealing and burglarizing that zone on the right. But I'm expecting my opponent to counter probably with the Centaurs or the Abomination. So there's a photo of them stealthily, like, going through the forest. It's like that scene from Family Guy where they do a version of Return of the Jedi where Peter's walking through the forest and he's, like, stepping on stuff. And anyway, I digress. Militia just turning around a little bit and just camping on the zone, waiting for, the opponent to respond to them effectively. There's the photo of my Errant Order of the Shield. He is half-painted. I will be continuing to add layers and layers of detail to get him up to speed to justify the and really do justice to the great sculpt. Okay, so on the hill here with the Imperial Officer, we're just shuffling our position a bit more so that they can now get line of sight using the hill, and all stands are on the hill, except for the one on the left, but most of them are on there. Then the Biomancer just moving on to the zone. So you can see here from this photograph that his regiment is touching the zone to the right there, and my regiment isn't. So he'll be able to score, I won't. So that'll be a temporary bonus to the points, but I'm about to move on to the zone with a bunch of my guys, and then the fight can begin between our two big infantry regiments. And that's an overview of the field. You can sort of see that the mage is there in range to heal either the militia or the household guards. So far, we're seeing some shots from the Leonines into the militia, which are being healed back successfully by the mage. But I'm generally happy with this position because I'm able to sort of move around the buffs quite well with the Imperial Officer, Mage, and the Noble Lord. A really good combo formation here for the infantry. Very, very useful. So Mage, just getting a few heals off, a bit of a close-up on her, and then we'll move on to the Leonines, getting a few shots off into the Militia. Nothing much happening there. I rolled quite well defensively for that. And the Ashen Dawn, as promised, just coming in behind their screen here of men-at-arms. Now, one problem that I'm concerned about here, one risk, is that if my opponent plays his Stryx unit very, very well, he could get the Stryx in contact with the men-at-arms while the Ashen Dawn are still behind there, and the men-at-arms probably won't be able to destroy the Stryx straight away, which will effectively block my formation for a while, allowing the brute drones to get into combat with the Hunter Cadre and kill them. And if he's moved up his Desolation Drones far enough as well, they may get a shot off on the Ashen Dawn at the same time that the brute drones fight them, in which case there's the potential for him to Pheromancer me down to defense 3, Desolation me down to defense 2, and then he attacks me with a whole regiment of brute drones, which would crush this entire flank and probably give him the win. So I have to be careful about that. Here is the overview at the end of turn 3. So on the left-hand flank, the Ashen Dawn potentially could murder all 3 of the regiments he's committed to this side, and I could score both zones, but I have to sort of outplay and outposition those regiments. In the middle, it's looking pretty even between the Household Guard, who are better in combat than the Bound Clones, but he's going to be defense 5, and he's going to have a ton of healing. On the right-hand side, the Militia, depends on whether they get the jump on the Siegebreaker or not. He has deployed just the Abomination against my men-at-arms, so that will successfully defend his zone because the men-at-arms just by themselves won't be able to really beat the Abomination. And of course, the Siegebreaker coming through, it's going to be tough for the Siegebreaker to win that one, because I don't think he can really kill all the militia in one round, given that they're fearless. And I've got 2 regiments of crossbows plus the Mage's gun and the Imperial Officer for murderous volley, which will do quite a lot of work on that Siegebreaker, to be sure. So on the right-hand side, you can see the little face-off there between the A-bomb and the men-at-arms in the forest. And my opponent is still yet to deploy 1 unit, which is his cavalry of the Centaurs, and I still have my cavalry of the Household Knights, so we'll see what happens in turn 4 for that. I'm going to go with the mage first to get a bit of healing off, or possibly a fireball before I move on to the mercenaries and so on. We're going to go with the militia last, just in case he moves in range of the Siegebreaker. So that's, again, another reason why you want to have a lot of cards in your list, because that way you can sort of zone your opponent out and just refuse to activate that key ingredient before your opponents have either used their activations or walked within range, and then you attack them. We're going Household Guard last, though, because I want to be able to either receive the charge from the bound clones, which will retain the good position that I'm in, or if he refuses to commit, I might get a free charge on him and he might not be able to attack back. So that's the thinking with the list here. By the way, I'll just sort of talk you through what this is. This is our nominations for which zones cannot be scored from every turn, and it's being done in secret. So this is turn 4 now. So if we look at the zones from left to right, let me just go back and find the thing that I'm after here. So that is number 1 on the right. This is 2 on the 2 from that. The middle one's ignored. Then it's 3, and then it's 4. So zones 2 and 4 are on my side. Zones 1 and 3 are on his side. So going back to this, on turn 2, I basically denied zone number 3. And then on turn 3, I denied zone number 1. And then on turn 4, I came back to denying zone number 1. But because my opponent actually picked the same zone as me on turn 2, he went ahead on points because his Stryx were camping zone number 3 at the end of turn 2. And he had the Biomancer turn them into a scoring unit. So my opponent is ahead on points purely because of luck on the guessing game. So you can sort of see how it is there, right? Alright, Bound Clones activating, and not moving to fight the Household Guard just yet, but they are setting up a few different things with the Biomancer's abilities. We then have the crossbows just moving possibly into range of the Leonines. No, the Leonines just moving in range of them. I know there was some sort of shootout there, but I can't quite remember the specifics of it. Not a lot of damage was done. Mage activating here, just healing the militia. You can see in the background of this photo that the militia are reduced to 4 stands where I had 6. The mage pulls them all the way back to 5 stands, so that's what's able to be done there. Then she can entourage into that unit, which moves up and fires at the Leonines, able to do enough damage to actually strip 1 stand away, which is really, really helpful. So you can see they're down to 2 stands plus the character now, but the Centaurs arrive behind them, able to march charge through them to take on either my mercenaries, while, you know, if he can set it up in such a way that the mercenaries are just sitting there while the other 2 infantry blocks are fighting the Siegebreaker and the Bound Clones, that might allow him to break through my line, so I've got to worry about that. And he does have burnout for the extra speed. So, again, very happy with the lighting opportunities in this particular gaming room. It was a local community hall, and compared to the normal LGS, I got much better lighting on the photos. You can sort of see how the household knights look here. These guys are not positioned very well because the forest will stop them from getting impact hits onto the Abomination, but the thinking here is that the Abomination shouldn't be able to beat both the men-at-arms and the knights at the same time. So if I just move up simultaneously and put him in a situation where if he charges one of them and fails to kill me because of the good armor of the regiments there, and the other unit attacks the A-bomb, I should be able to grind them down. And if I end the turn or end the game with just 1 regiment, even if it's just 1 stand left controlling that zone, I'll be well ahead. So that's the thinking there. Siegebreaker not committing just yet, just jockeying for position, getting into a spot where if he goes for the unstable enhancement, no, the burnout from Directorate, he should be able to get into range. But I've set myself up such a way we've got this impassable hill here, reducing a little bit of frontage, so it's going to make it more awkward for him to get the Centaurs and the Siegebreaker into that same regiment. Over here, the men-at-arms are pulling back and turning around and pivoting a bit, just so that if the A-bomb, commits here, it'll leave the zone. So that's quite important. So we're waiting for the Household Knights to catch up, and I'm going to take a lot of time here, maybe 2 or 3 turns, just to slowly crimp forward incrementally and then kill the A-bomb closer to turn 7 or 8, because that's all the advantage I really need in the late game, to be honest. And the A-bomb just backing up, hanging around. So over on this side, I'm moving the other men-at-arms forward so they can create a bit more of a buffer space for the Ashen to move up and still be screened. He could potentially move between the men-at-arms and the Ashen with the Stryx if he wants to at some point to block a potential play, but at this point, not worth it because the Ashen will just ride them down. So over here, the unit's just moving around carefully. We're not committing the Stryx just yet. They do have a little a buff on them for something going on there. We have some stuff being handed out by the Imperial officer, but not really much else that he can achieve. And then my opponent decides to make a very daring play, and I don't know if I would have recommended this play, but he marches into the forest and then goes for a long bomb charge with Unstoppable into the Hunter Cadre, which doesn't even cause the Hunter Cadre to suffer impact hits because he's gone through the forest. I don't particularly like this play because even if he is able to clash the Hunter Cadre to kill them and then charge or move out of the way of the line of sight of the Ashen Dawn, it still gives me time to turn around and potentially win the supremacy roll and get the charge off. And without the support of the Desolation Drones in there as well, Defense 4 Blessed Order of the Ashen Dawn are still going to be a hard opponent for this regiment of 5 brute drones, so I don't love it. And a lot can go wrong here. I can activate the Hunter Cadre first and get a lot of damage, and the Men-at-Arms can move out of the way, tie up the Stryx, the Ashen Dawn could charge in the flanks. So what I would have done in my opponent's situation would really have just been to wait for a while, because I've committed 3 regiments, he's got 3 regiments on his side, he can move the Stryx somewhere else to get out of the way, and if I move into him, he can actually slap me with both of the -1 debuffs. But with this sort of play, he's left the Desolation Drones too far into the background, and they can't contribute to the fight at the same time as the brutes. You know, worst case scenario, you just want to, if you're going to lose the brute unit, you at least want to get a 1 round of free shooting off with the Desolation Drones onto the Ashen Dawn at a turn where they are already -1 defense, if you know what I'm saying. So, speaking of which, the Ashen Dawn are able to turn around now in such a way that if I win the roll next turn, I can move the Men-at-Arms out of the way, and I can actually charge in the flank with the Ashen Dawn, wipe out the brute drones, and then it should be relatively easy for me to continue along that flank with the cavalry and just beat them up on that side. Over here, the militia moving backwards because I can see that my opponent is lining up a burnout run with the Siegebreaker, so I want to make it a little bit more awkward for him and, you know, force him to at least roll a dice rather than just rolling, you know, getting a free charge. And it puts me a bit closer to the knights who could potentially flank it if I wanted to, and the close range for the crossbowmen firing overhead. Now, on this side, I've decided to move on to the zone with the Noble Lord and the Household Guard command stand next to him, so that it'll be 2 of my scoring stands to his 1 scoring stand, allowing me to score unless he commits with the Bound clones. And that's it. We go into turn number 5, and the first turn is going to be the Hunter Cadre because they're currently locked in combat with brute drones, and I want to get a bit of damage done before they die. Second card will be the Mage, either to heal the militia or to put a fireball into something. But then after that, I want him to attack me rather than the other way around. I just want to shoot at him, so we're going to hold off with the important militia and everything else until last. I just want to get the Hunter Cadre activating first before we move on to the Mage and everything else. So my opponent attacks the Hunter Cadre after I did win the roll, by the way, so they do attack the brute drones and get some damage. So the Pheromancer then activates, and we realize that if he attacks without inspiring, it's clash 2 with rerolls, and he might not chew through the entire regiment. Ideally, he'd be able to do that and then march out of line of sight of the Ashen Dawn, but it looks really unlikely. And the problem for him is that if he gets a bad dice roll at Clash 2 and leaves me with one stand left, well, that just gives me another unit which can score in that zone there, and I can move the Ashen Dawn and the Men-at-Arms to a completely different part of the battlefield. So he does Inspire and he does Clash, and the Hunter Cadre are wiped out, but he hasn't changed his position, so I can still flank him with the Ashen Dawn, sadly for him. We now have a charge here with the Bound clones. These guys can't do that much because they don't have any cleave, really, and I've got Defense 3 with the reroll 6s, and I can obviously avoid Ground Violence, and yeah, looking pretty good for me. He's got a lot of stands on the zone, but as soon as the Noble Lord declares a duel, the Biomancer is going to want to decline that duel, and that stops the Bound clones from scoring, so that's why it's quite helpful to have that Noble Lord in there. Alright, so the Mage has actually healed back a full regiment of Militia at this point. I started with 6 stands, and they're sort of like in an L shape around the Mercenary Crossbowmen. I don't know if that's legal or not, but that's how it looked for this particular game. The Leonine's down to just 1 stand plus the character, so if they get shot anymore, they are going to be removed. So a bit of a problem there, since there's no healing on them. We then have a really fun play here from the Men-at-Arms. I decided to march forward and wheel enough so that they could gain line of sight to the Brutes, and then charge them in the back, because the Hunter Cadre have already removed to stand there, and now that well and truly pins them in place, but also keeps the Men-at-Arms in there for scoring purposes. So if the Ashen Dawn charge in the flank and wipe out the Brutes here, and I end up not really touching the zone, I've at least got the Men-at-Arms in there to do the scoring. So that's the plan. Then, of course, we have the Ashen Dawn charging in the flank, and you can sort of see why this this play here from the Brute Drones is not really, not really the best option that was available to Spires here. At this point, he loses the entire regiment, and I take no damage to the Ashen Dawn, so yeah, looking pretty good. Now, the Noble Lord issuing his challenge, of course, and the Biomancer, like a coward, is declining the duel, and of course that causes his regiment to not score, and we move on. The Siegebreaker now. This is another play that I felt like was a bit of a risk, and possibly showing a little bit of nerves here from Spires. Just turning around and march charging into the side of the Noble Lord's unit. The thinking here from the Siegebreaker is that he feels like he's not going to do well against the Militia, so going in the side here allows him to destroy the Household Guard completely next turn, leaving the Bound clones there to camp the zone, and then the Siegebreaker can turn around and start dealing with the crossbows, and that frees up his Centaurs to go after the Militia. I think that's the thinking of it. The problem with this play is that I'm going to get a couple of good, decent rounds of shooting at close range with crossbows, and I can add Murderous Volley from the Imperial Officer. So the Siegebreaker is not really going to have enough wounds to withstand that. If you look at it, he's got 16 wounds, Defense 4 with no hardened, and I have my Supremacy turn to get rerolls from Opportunists, so that is a lot of crossbow shots. And 16 wounds just isn't really enough to cut it. He'll also be up against the die fighting rule from the Noble Lord, who has a Caledburn. And if I get even one round of close combat with the Household Guard's pikes, they will also do a fair bit of damage to the Siegebreaker. So all in all, I just wouldn't have made this play. I feel like another way you can do it is to have just turned around and sent the Siegebreaker after the left-hand flank side with the Men-at-Arms and the Knights, and over a period of about 4 turns, he would have eventually killed all of that stuff and then threatened the flank of my other circular zone on the other side. Or, just suck it up and go straight into the Militia. Or what I probably would have done myself would have been to really just activate the Siegebreaker and the Centaurs last, and then just march them into range of the Militia, and then next turn just try and attack them with both units. So here we are, really good little photo of the Household Guard trying to spike them down with their halberds. And we do have an activation here from the Household Guard. Some of them are able to attack the Siegebreaker, some of them have to attack the Bound clones, but generally speaking, not a lot of damage is inflicted with this particular round. But it is enough to take the Siegebreaker down to a pretty low number of hit points. Over here, we, as you can see, have the Desolation Drones double marching up onto the objective, and they are going to be able to start shooting at the Ashen Dawn next turn. The Abomination and the Centaurs just moving around a little bit, and you can see the Centaurs will be getting ready to burn out and charge me in a future turn. More repositioning from the Imperial Officer, but now we can fire at the Siegebreaker with the crossbows, inflicting a lot of damage with the Supremacy turn using the Opportunists buff from the Imperial subfaction rule. A-Bomb continuing to just shuffle around, going to the back of the zone, just doesn't want to commit just yet. And then, for that reason, we have the Men-at-Arms getting the free reform from the Imperial Officer's Supremacy turn, and they're just shuffling around a little bit, trying to make more room for the Knights, just to carefully move in to ensure that whenever he does commit the Abomination, I'll be able to attack with whichever unit he doesn't charge. And to be honest, if he charges the Knights, I might even be able to shrug off most of his attacks thanks to the good defense from the Knights. So here we go, the Stryx are committing to the rear of the Men-at-Arms, but the dice roll not going particularly well here, and I think that I managed to survive with one stand. And then if the Ashen Dawn attack the Stryx, that's going to mean that I take the lethal demise hits, and then he can shoot at me with the Desolation Drones, but still, it's only going to take one surviving stand from the Ashen Dawn unit to destroy both these regiments in the long run. They are that tough, and they are that good at killing things. I will not need 3 stands against these 2 small units. Alright, lovely photos here. We have the Knights lining up next to the Men-at-Arms against the Abomination, and as you can see there, the positioning is very carefully engineered in such a way that if he charges me, I get to hit him in the flank, and if he does nothing, I'll eventually move on to the zone with one or more of these units and start taking the points away. Just a slightly more vanity photo there of the beautiful Household Knights regiment. Okay, so anticipating a bit of a play here, we're getting a free reform here from the Militia, and we're just maximizing the frontage because I want to make sure that I just get the maximum number of hits off onto the Centaurs if I get the jump on them. And I've also moved them forward, so you can sort of see here that the Militia are just slightly under 7 inches away. They are March 6 because of the Servite officer upgrade, and rolling a 1 gives me a 7 to get an automatic charge onto the Centaurs next turn. And this is the kind of play I want to set up. I want to be in a position where if my opponent wins the roll and sends the Centaurs directly into the Militia and rolls poorly, I will have enough stuff left to actually use Elysian Fragment and do damage to the Centaurs and then finish them off with the crossbows. If I win the roll, the Militia goes straight into the Centaurs and delete them, and then he's only got a couple of Leonines to shoot at me with, and I should be able to clean them up as well. If my opponent goes with the Siegebreaker first, probably what will happen is the Biomancer, Unstable Enhancement or whatever onto the Siegebreaker, and then he will double team the Household Guards to absolutely cream them. I should have die fighting from the Noble Lord, 2 shots with the crossbows later on, and honestly that will allow me to activate the Militia before he activates the Centaurs. So this does feel like a winning situation to 100 Kingdoms. If you can see a way out of this for Spires, let me know, but I feel like I have engineered like a strong enough situation on all 3 flanks, well, all 3 like lanes of the table, right flank, left flank, and center, to be able to pull out a decisive win here. So let's see how it turns out. Errant Order the Shield going first on the left there for the Fragment, then we're going with the Militia to destroy the Centaurs, then we're going with the Noble Lord and the Household Guard, and we're saving the Knights for last. Everything else is in the middle. You can sort of see the left-hand zoom out of the battlefield there as it doesn't really matter what happens on the left there. He's going to shoot at me with the Desolation Drones no matter what. The Knights and the Men-at-Arms are going to clear out the Stryx, and then at least if 1 or 2 stands can go over and kill the Desolation Drones, I've got that side of the table locked down. So, opponent does indeed go first, and he picks the Biomancer to go first, does some healing onto the drones there, and then he uses his ability to go and activate the Siegebreaker, and then he comes back to the Desolation, sorry, the Bound clones. So, between the 2 of them, my regiment is reduced to effectively 5 wounds left on the Household Guards and the character. So, when it comes time for me to attack, I'm not really going to get a lot done. You You can sort of see a bit more of a close-up there of the Noble Lord's positioning. Unfortunately for my opponent, that means that my activation, when it's my turn, is to go Order of the Shield, Elysian Fragment, Entourage into the Militia, and they charge the Centaurs, who just don't stand a chance. You know, this is everybody is at Cleave 3 here. Just poking the little sticks, you know, the cabbage farbing sticks, and the Centaurs are absolutely deleted. Another little glamour photo there of the Order of the Shield. Can't wait to actually paint his shield. It looks like a really good shield to paint up, so I'll get onto that soon. Over here, just the dying breath, really, of the Noble Lord and his, like, 2 wounds. We're attacking the Bound clones, and we're taking some lethal demise damage. There is that. And, of course, the duel from the Noble Lord there being declined by the Bound clones, meaning he still can't score from the zone because the Biomancer just doesn't want to lose his head. Over here, we now have the men-at-arms moving on to the zone. So we've got 2 stands touching the zone, just daring the Abomination to do something about it. So over here, the Leonines are able to shoot and then charge the Militia, which does a fair bit of damage, I must add, but not really enough to threaten the safety of this unit. And now, of course, you're up against the Order of the Shield guy who has eccentric fighting style and Cleave 2 base, and it's going to get really rude. Over here, we've lost a stand of guys to enemy shooting, but at least the crossbows can move up onto this little mini hill and shoot at the Leonines, and just getting in range to do that, of course, size 2 cavalry I can shoot over the Militia. Desolation Drones able to move up and blast the Order of the Ashen Dawn and inflict quite a lot of damage there. I think 4 or 5 wounds worth of damage, which was quite nasty. And then we have another play here from the Abomination, just fucking off over to the Militia. He decides that he can't beat the Household Knights or the Men-at-Arms, so he's just turning around, charging the flank of the Militia, and trying to get something done that way, but I just don't really feel like that's going to be a winner. Over here, we have the reform from the Imperial Officer and just moving over to touch the zone. Because the Militia have moved off of this zone, the Officer needs to move onto it, and he's able to score with a Light Regiment because of the Relentless Drills combo move, which gives you +1 for scoring on your command stand if you have the Resolve bonus, meaning 4 stands or more. Alright, the beautiful, beautiful Household Knight here. This is the Noble Lord, actually, from the Joust Founders Exclusive. Very rare these days, hard to find any more copies of these, but I managed to fork out the absolute life savings gold mine of a lump sum to purchase these 2 miniatures. And, you know, I had a good time painting them, and they do look good, but it was a lot of money. So they're just moving on to the zone so they can charge the A-bomb in the butt next turn. And then, of course, because they're such great models, bit of a glamorous vanity photo of them. Right, so first order of the day, we're going with the Order of the Ashen Dawn next to destroy the Stryx, basically. And we're just going to work our way around after that. And this is the overview of the battlefield. Essentially, with my opponent really only having about 4 regiments left, it's pretty much just clean-up time. So we'll just work through this really quickly. Ashen Dawn are able to destroy the Stryx down the bottom left, leaving 1 stand of men-at-arms alive to camp the zone. Then they are able to charge the Desolation Drones, and I've effectively got 7 wounds remaining on this regiment. 6 on one stand, 1 on the other, or 2 on the other, so 8 wounds. By the time you get into close combat with the Desolation Drones, they're just not really going to do much more against your blessed armor. The Noble Lord is going to be dying here against the Brown clones, but he's done a good job of holding on there with his constant dueling and heckling of the Biomancer. We also have the Abomination attacking the Militia and not really getting a lot done. I do have a good resolve and I do have Fearless, so that's quite helpful there. The Bound clone's able to move through the Household Guard after destroying them and charge the Mage and getting rid of her, so that's really useful. But the Knights just charging the A-bomb up the butt and just ramming the Lance right up there and killing it very easily. So Ashen Dawn able to destroy the Desolation Drones. We have the Imperial Officer camping the home base zone. Eventually it got around to a point where I had lost some points due to my opponent picking the same zone as me. on his side of the board and doubling up points. But then the same thing happened on my side of the table, so that evened up. And by the time we got to about turn 7 or 8, I'm scoring on every single zone, except for the middle one, of course. So Militia just reforming around and just getting ready to take on the Bound clones, and you can sort of see the battlefield situation where the concession is made to end at turn 7 or 8, where it's really just the Bound clones and the Desolations who are up against one Ashen Dawn there. And that's really all there is, to be honest. We called it there. You can sort of see there were a few like timing decisions made with the Spires not really committing the right things to the right parts of the battlefield and not sort of moving them in the right times. But I also feel like this was a list that had a lot of points spent on character upgrades for Spires, whereas realistically you can afford like a 14-card Spires list if you want to, which in the current meta is actually way more effective because you can hold off on activating your key units until the end of the turn. Hopefully, you know, the opposing regiments have already activated by then, giving you better positioning advantage. And having more stuff on the battlefield really helps to set up flanking opportunities and buys your shooting regiments more time to just get the damage done. So yeah, really want to see more of that, and that's what I'd play as Spires. But yeah, that's it for today's one. We've got another game day coming up this weekend, so we're going to be trying out some more 100 Kingdom stuff, and look forward to seeing you then. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you later.